Thanks, Taylor. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. Well, this film is about the $50 billion a year divorce industry, where everybody loses except the judges, the lawyers, and the court insiders. We did extensive research to make this film. We interviewed lawyers, professional custody evaluators, judges, forensic accountants, law professors, psychology professors, and most important of all, the victims of the system. And we found out that at the end of our interview process, just about everybody, including the judges and the lawyers, think the system is broken. They all have different reasons as to why they think the system is broken, and they have different solutions, but almost nobody thinks that the system is working well. Well, divorce is a controversial subject, and so is child custody and child care. You know, everybody has a different opinion about what should happen after a divorce, and we touch upon these issues. For example, some people think divorce should be made easier. Some people think that divorce should be made harder. Should children go to their mother or their father after divorce, or should they be shared equally? Do we still need alimony in this country? What about child support? Should child support be a percentage of the non-custodial parent's income as it is now, or should it be a fixed amount sufficient for the needs of the child? Do we really need judges or lawyers to get divorced? What role does domestic violence play in child custody? Should unmarried parents have any rights? And if so, should those rights be equal between men and women? Should people have the right to a jury in family court, or a lawyer if they can't afford one, because right now they don't get those? Our movie asks a lot of these tough questions, and by asking those questions, we're raising a great deal of controversy. Well, I had the opportunity to sit through family court for many hours, and I witnessed people being treated unfairly by the system, people essentially being abused by the people who operate the courtrooms, and most people coming out with very unfavorable outcomes. You know, the judges only have about 5 or 10 minutes to handle each case, and they have dozens of cases to deal with. And that doesn't give them very much time to either be courteous or thorough, or to look at the human aspects of what they're really handling there. You know, I saw that people were treated, some like cash registers. I saw that parents were motivated to fight over custody time, because the more custody time you can convince the judge you're entitled to, the more child support you could either get, or the less child support that you have to pay. So there's a financial tug of war going on between the parents over financial resources. The children themselves were used as carrots and sticks to manipulate the parents. I saw instances where judges required the parents to go through very expensive custody evaluations in order to be able to see their children. And some of these custody evaluations could cost $20,000, $50,000, sometimes $100,000 for a custody evaluation that these parents really couldn't afford. I saw that judges would often hire lawyers for children, even against the parents' wishes. Even if both parents did not think it was appropriate, the judge would still do it. He'd hire a lawyer for the children, someone that the judge oftentimes knows, and these lawyers would charge bills and the parents would have to pay for it. And when the parents have to pay these bills, they weren't allowed to review the bills. They weren't allowed to question them. They just simply had to pay. And there were instances where the lawyers racked up bills of $100,000 or more just taking children to the movies or going to parent-teacher conferences. People who were critical of the court and the court system, or particularly people that were critical of judges, were crushed. Some of them were fined. Some of them were sent to jail. Some of them were censored. They were told to shut down their websites or their Facebook pages because of their criticism of the courts. The system and the way the court is set up brings out bad behavior in people. We use what's called the adversarial system in family court. And the adversarial system, that might work well for criminal court. It might work for big corporations fighting against patent issues or, you know, certain kinds of trademark issues, but it doesn't work well in family court, because what happens is it motivates the husband and wife to make accusations against each other. Instead of settling things peacefully, what they're motivated to do is call out the flaws in the other party. And by calling out the flaws in the other party, all you do is aggravate the other side, and then the other side then escalates that, and what you get is two people hating each other at the end of the process. So as I witnessed all of this dysfunction in the family court, I wondered, well, why would they be doing it this way? Because everybody agreed that the system's dysfunctional. Well, if you have a dysfunctional system that's treating people badly, why does it exist that way? And what we came up with is pretty much about money. And it's money for the insiders, the court professionals, the lawyers, the custody evaluators, everybody who's involved with this whole family law process makes money off of it. As I said earlier, it's a $50 billion a year industry. And what the industry drives off of is the kind of the patriarchal dependent provider relationship that used to exist in America 50, 70, 100 years ago, but is now becoming less and less common in the United States. And in a dependent provider relationship, what you have is once the marriage is dissolved, you have the provider making support payments to the dependent. And those support payments are actually what drives the family law system and how the professionals make their money, because they essentially take a piece of those support payments. And so without the dependent provider relationship, you have no support payments, and without support payments, you don't have money for the lawyers and the judges to make. And so what we found out is the family courts were prone to maintain the patriarchal system, the dependent provider relationship, even when one might not really be there. Well, what I'd like people to take away from this film is that there's a better way. And we know there's a better way because we travel to another part of the world, and I'm not going to tell you where, you have to see the film, where they do things very differently. First of all, their divorce rate is about the same as in the United States, yet they don't use courts and they don't use lawyers to get divorced. What they do is they fill out a form, send it into the government, and say that I'd like to be divorced. They have to wait 6 months, and if they wait 6 months and they haven't reconciled, then they are divorced, and it's really that simple. Yet, it has not increased the divorce rate compared to the divorce rate in the United States. They're both about the same, so people who would say making that easy is going to be promotive of divorce, well, that's not borne out in the facts. Secondly, they treat children very differently there. They care about the children. They care about what is best for the children, truly best for the children. They respect the parents' wishes. If the parents come up with a custody schedule that works for both parents and works for the children, that's what they follow. In the United States, as I said earlier, there's a cash reward for winning more custody time, so it motivates the parents to fight over children. Whereas in this other part of the world, there is no difference in the amount of child support paid, depending upon whether you have the child 10% of the time, 50% of the time, or 90% of the time. And the other thing they did is they made child support and a fixed amount of money that's sufficient for the needs of the child, but not a reward for the custodial parent. So it's not a percentage of the non-custodial parent's income like it is in the United States. It's simply a fixed amount that gets paid, and it's the same amount for every child in the country. And so there's no motivation to go to court to fight over child support, to do all the expensive investigation of salaries and retirement plans and all that. Now that's necessary because it's just a fixed dollar amount every month. And so what we find out is the parents have no reason to go to court because it's simple to get divorced, it's simple to handle the custody matters. And again, I'm not going to reveal where in the world this is, but I can say that their children score as well or better than U.S. children on standardized tests. It's a very prosperous, successful part of the world. In fact, their GDP per capita is higher than the United States. Their unemployment rate is lower. And their rate of domestic violence against children is 1/10 of what it is in the United States. Yeah, what I'd like to add is that we have a reform agenda. We think that both men and women, fathers and mothers and children will be able to get behind this agenda because it will solve many of the problems that are commonplace in family court today. We've really worked hard on this project. We've involved a lot of people, a lot of experts, a lot of victims, and we believe we've come at it from a fairly neutral approach and neutral perspective. And after weighing all the evidence, all the information that we've gained, we believe that we see solutions that could at least make a difference for the parents and the children that are going through these terrible custody situations, and for people that are dragged into this adversarial system that we think is unnecessary. So we have created a website called divorcecorp.com. We have laid out our reform agenda on the website, and we hope that we can gain support. We're not legislators, we're not politicians. I mean, we've already seen some detractors, and they haven't seen the film yet. There are a lot of interests that people are going to want to protect. There's the litigators that are making $50 billion a year off of this industry. There's the custody evaluators. There are fathers' rights groups that think we're not being masculine enough or aggressive enough. We're not attacking the other side, which we think is counterproductive to do that. There are mothers' rights groups that think that we are not focused enough on domestic violence, or that mothers are better parents than fathers. And, we just say, look, put down your swords. Let's adopt a gender-neutral agenda. This is the United States. Everybody's supposed to be equal. Let's start from that platform and move forward and try to reform these laws in a way where everybody gets a fair shake. Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to get the word out about Divorce Corp.